Good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the Skokie Village Board for Tuesday, January the 17th, 2023. This evening, we will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Deputy Village Clerk Sylvia Luke.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The meeting will come to order, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Trustee Sutker?
Here.
Trustee Robinson?
Here.
Trustee Kuhn?
Here.
Trustee Johnson?
Here.
Trustee Pierce-Slovan?
Here.
Trustee Klein? Here. Mayor Van Duzen?
Here, we have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda for this evening's meeting. A motion is in order. Trustee Sutker, seconded by Trustee Kuhn. Is there anything on the consent agenda anybody would like to have removed? If not, call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson?
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Pierce-Slovan? Aye. Trustee Klein? Mayor Van Duzen?
Aye. The motion passes. It gives me extraordinary pleasure this evening to honor one of the companies in our Illinois Science and Technology Park in the village of Skokie. LanzaTech is the only company in North America, not just the United States, but all of North America, who was a finalist in the Earthshot Prize. And it just goes to show what individual ingenuity can do to help sustainability throughout the world. Whereas LanzaTech, a carbon recycling technology company residing at 8045 Lamont in the Illinois Science and Technology Park, is an innovator in the biotech industry. LanzaTech and its revolutionary approach of taking waste emissions and essentially converting them into a more sustainable path for cleaner products. And whereas in early 2014, LanzaTech relocated its headquarters from Auckland, New Zealand to the Illinois Science and Technology Park here in Skokie, acknowledging the leadership of Michael Rosen, then Senior Vice President of Forest City Enterprises for Science and Technology, for developing relationships with emerging biotech research companies such as LanzaTech, in growing the ISTP as a hub of emerging clean energy and bioenergy companies. And whereas Dr. Jennifer Holmgren, CEO, and her extraordinary team, including co-founder Dr. Sean Simpson, have led and grown LanzaTech to over 300 employees operating in 9 countries across the world. And whereas LanzaTech continues to search for innovative methods and systems to turn pollution into everyday products by partnering with yoga apparel retailer Lululemon to create the first fabric used through recycled carbon emissions, with cosmetics giant Coty to produce clean and safe ethanol for perfume manufacturing and other sustainable cosmetic products. And where LanzaTech used a first-of-its-kind bioreactor filled with microbes and carbon-rich waste gases to produce ethanol, which was converted to sustainable jet fuel that powered a Virgin Atlantic Boeing 747 from Orlando to London, England in 2018. And whereas in 2021, LanzaTech partnered with Skokie Sketchbook Brewing in collaborating on a specialty batch celebration beer called the 150, which is very good, by the way, marking the milestone of their China commercial plant reaching 150 days of continuous production, converting industrial waste gases into ethanol. And in 2022, a second celebration beer was produced with Sketchbook after LanzaTech received its 1,000th patent. IP Awesome was named after the intellectual property created to recycle carbon. And whereas LanzaTech was recently honored by Loyola University of Chicago's School of Environmental Sustainability and the 1111 Foundation for being the only U.S. finalist, North American finalist, in the Earthshot Prize founded by Prince William. Now, therefore, I, George Van Duzen, Mayor of the Village of Skokie, on behalf of its elected officials, do hereby proudly honor LanzaTech for their many contributions as being a pioneer and global leader in creating a sustainable, clean energy environment, and we wish you much continued success. I'd like to introduce Freya Burton, who is the Chief of Sustainability, the Chief Sustainability Officer of LanzaTech. And is Rich Grow with us? He had said he was going to be here. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mayor Van Duzen. It's such an honor to be here to represent LanzaTech. Jennifer and Sean wanted to come, but unfortunately they were traveling. But we have been so happy to have Skokie as our home for the last almost 10 years. And we look forward to growing our team and staying here and just seeing where we go. And hopefully you will get to keep watching our progress. Thanks so much.
And I do want to recognize and thank LanzaTech for helping us grow the park. Whenever we've asked LanzaTech if they would mind hosting a guest, the last two governors of the state of Illinois have visited the park as an example of the kind of businesses the state is trying to attract. 3 of our congressional delegation have visited the park, and all of our state legislators have visited the park. And in every instance, LanzaTech has hosted them and taken them around and showed them what it is that the 20-something companies in the park are all about, iBio and nanotechnology. You may have noticed some of the whereases in the proclamation were a little technical. I assure you, I do not know what I was reading. I have been over to LanzaTech on numerous occasions. I've had the opportunity to have it explained to me, and whenever I leave, I have that aha. I do understand. And then I wake up the following morning and I say, what is it exactly I learned yesterday? It is remarkable what they do, and I'm just very proud to have them in Skokie. And just finally, I had mentioned Michael Rosen. Some of you on the village board, I think, know Michael. He lives just down the street from us, and Frag. He had wanted to be here this evening, but he and his wife Vivian were traveling and they're out of the country. But he asked me to extend to you and to Dr. Holmgren his congratulations on all of the prizes that you've won in just the last couple of years. Congratulations and thank you. Next item on our agenda is the swearing in of a new sergeant. Bruce Rotner, member of our Board of Fire and Police Commission, will do the honors. And we do have a special guest this evening, the Chief of Police of Evanston, Janita Stewart, I believe, is with us. There is it. You're hiding on me. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. And of course, Brian Baker, our chief, is here with us. Commissioner, all yours.
Thank you, Mayor. And good evening. I'd like to take a moment to thank Chief. How are you? Good. I'd like to take a moment to thank Mayor Van Dusen and our hardworking trustees and John Lockerbie, our village manager, for allowing me the honor of representing the Skokie Board of Fire and Police Commission, and our chairman, Will Evans, who's here. I'd also like to thank the family and the friends of the new sergeant who joined us here this evening. It's your support tonight and throughout your new sergeant's career that will have an extraordinary impact, And I'm looking at you two guys there because I know who you are. On the success we know he will achieve in the future. He is joining the supervisory ranks of the Skokie Police Department, nationally recognized as one of the finest police departments in our country, currently under the strong leadership of Chief Brian Baker, who's with us tonight. There's certain significant dates we all remember in our lives, and one of them for me was December 1st of 1988, when I was promoted to sergeant in Chicago. And I had this really cute, endearing story I was going to tell, but then I figured I'd probably be a former fire and police commissioner if I told the whole thing. So in terms of brevity, let me end my brief personal comments with a short piece of advice to Sergeant McCune. Eric, your only obligation is making sure your men and women get home safely at the end of their tour of duty. Everything else you can handle, but that's your only obligation. So with that, I would ask Sergeant Eric McCune to come up here. And Eric, if you'll follow with me, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. Please state your name.
Eric McCune,
Do solemnly swear that I will uphold the Constitution of the United States of America,
do solemnly swear that I will uphold the Constitution of the United States of America,
the state of Illinois,
the state of Illinois,
the ordinances of the village of Skokie,
the ordinances of the village of Skokie,
and the rules and regulations
and the rules and regulations
of the police department
of the police department
and the Skokie Board of Fire and Police Commission,
and the Skokie Board of Fire and Police Commission,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of a police sergeant to the best of my ability.
of a police sergeant to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. It's never done till the paperwork's done.
Sergeant, would you introduce your family and friends this evening?
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. In the front here, I have my wife, Krisha, my son, MJ, my daughter, Maya, and I got my mom and dad in the back over there. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think some would be interested to learn that Eric is a special case. He started out as a CSO, if I remember correctly, and through a lot of hard work and determination has found himself this evening a sergeant with the best police force in the United States. Congratulations, Eric. We're all very proud of you. And I know everybody wants to hear about lead water service, but I think why don't we take just a short break, congratulate Eric and Freya for their honors this evening. So we just take a short. The board will be back in session. Next item on our report is our village manager, John Lockerbie.
Thank you, Mayor Van Duzen and Village Board. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we have an item before you regarding lead water service line replacement and strategy update. As discussed during the village budget hearings in April of 2022, the state of Illinois now requires all lead water service lines be replaced. In Skokie, this is approximately 10,000 of our 17,600 active water service accounts. This is an unfunded mandate, which is anticipated to cost a minimum of $80 million in today's dollars and will likely take over the next 30 years. I would like to provide some context of the enormity and cost of this program before turning it over to our Public Works Director, Max Slankard. The village invested a similar amount for the stormwater management system that was designed and constructed to mitigate flooding in our community. That process began in the late 70s and early 80s and was completed in the 90s. Again, that cost was very similar to the amount we're talking about for lead service lines. More recent, the village currently has a stormwater management task force that is reviewing the existing needs in the community for handling rain and preventing flooding. The task force has concluded that the 10-year rain events are now 15% greater than when our system was originally designed. Thus, in order to meet the same standard, additional stormwater capacity is needed. The task force is reviewing and studying future options, but the preliminary cost estimate for updating the system is $146 million. As mentioned, I wanted to provide some context for the cost and enormity of the lead service replacement needs, and I'd like to turn it over to Max Slankard, our Director of Public Works, to talk about the recommended approach.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the board, for the opportunity to be here this evening. I will try and be as dynamic as the first two presentations, but we'll see how that goes, because I am talking about lead service lines after all. And as you all remember from the village's budget hearing last spring, we spent quite a period of time talking about this, and so we know this is a complex subject matter with quite a bit of detail to it, and some might regard it as not being that exciting, but not everybody's in public works, I suppose. So there's a detailed memo in the board's agenda packet outlining the totality and the background of this, just as a brief refresher. So January 1st of 2022, the state of Illinois joined one of just a handful of other states in the country in banning the partial service line replacements. So what does that mean? Just as a starting point, since we have the public's attention to talk about this for a few minutes this evening, let me just throw a quick graphic on our camera. So this graphic depicts what is typical in our system and in many communities' water systems of how a water line conveys water into a home. And I'm going to step away from the microphone. Sorry for those listening on what will become YouTube, or is YouTube currently. So here you see the typical property, a water main, and then this is a service line that connects the water main to the home. You will see that at some point there is what is referred to in this diagram as a curb stop that is a demarcation point in many water systems for where a point of responsibility breaks off between what is municipally owned or maintained and what becomes the maintenance responsibility or ownership of the private property. In this diagram, it uses the expression curb stop. In Skokie, we use the expression B-box, which is short for buffalo box. They essentially mean the same thing. It is a valve in the parkway in Skokie, immediately behind the sidewalk line, typically, where we can access a valve and turn off your water service. We would never do that, of course, unless there's a situation of non-payment perchance, when we wouldn't necessarily turn your water all the way off, although we might threaten to do that. We would ratchet it down to just an essential life-sustaining flow to try and influence you to pay your water bill if it were overdue. Or the other situation, of course, why we would want to have a curb stop out there is if you are unable to just turn off the flow of water inside of your home, we can turn off the flow of water outside of your home. And then you see the balance of the water line that goes inside of the home, a depiction of where the property line is. So why is this important? For an older community like Skokie, like many older suburban communities or inner city communities in the United States, up until about 1986, it was very common for the water service line to be made of lead. So when we talk about lead in a water system, the lead in a water system does not come via the city or the village's water mains. Water mains are typically made of, in the old days, of cast iron, and more modern times, they're made of ductile iron. That's not where the lead comes from. The lead comes from the service line, which, as I said, up until 1986, when Congress outlawed the use of lead piping, lead was a common material. especially in northern cities, and especially in Chicago and the surrounding suburban areas. Lead was very common and commonly used in piping materials because it was readily available and it was cheap. It was easy to work with, it was bendable, it was flexible. So you have service lines that come off of the water main, go to a B-box or a curb stop, and then there's a component of the water line or service line continues and goes into the home, where it attaches then to the home's indoor plumbing. So up until the requirement that we quit doing partial service line replacements, when the village would come through and do a water main replacement, we would replace the water main and we would replace the section of service line from the main to the B-box. And we would replace that subsequent to 1986 in copper. And if you had lead from your B-box into your home, under our village code, you owned from the B-box to the home. If you had lead, that was your prerogative to have lead. We didn't require you to change your lead service line. That was up to you. And many people did upgrade their lead service lines over the years, but that was not a requirement that that lead service line be changed. So, leaving a lead service line on one side of the B-box while replacing this in copper, the lead service line on the village side of the B-box is what's referred to as a partial lead service line replacement. And that was the norm. As in recent years, there became concerns about lead in the water, the village was required to provide property owners notice about the health risks associated with lead. From a system standpoint, lead the water system is protected from lead leaching into the water by the introduction of orthophosphate in the water treatment process. And that's done by the city of Evanston, who's our water provider. What orthophosphate in the water does is it coats the inside of water lines. And it's intended to coat the inside of lead service lines to prevent lead from leaching into the water. As a control measure, orthophosphate does a pretty good job at that. It's considered to be a very effective control, and that's been done for many years. Why do I mention that? Because when lead service lines that have been treated with orthophosphate are disturbed by construction, that coating can be disrupted and lead particles can come off. So, for the last few years, we have been required to notify people when we are disturbing a lead service line. In the case of doing a water main replacement project, we're required to notify you of the elevated risks associated with lead levels temporarily rising during construction. We provide information to property owners. We provide information about filters that they can use, water pitchers that can filter out lead particles, etc. And so for the last few years, we have offered residents who are living adjacent to a water main project the opportunity to have their portion of the lead service line, if they have one, replaced, offering them unit pricing that we receive from our main line water main contractor. So that's what we've been doing up until this point. But now we are at a new point of demarcation where we can no longer only replace a portion of a lead service line. So under this new act, that is why this new act is such a big departure for us. So the only caveat I want to put out there to partial lead service line not being allowed is this. Bear in mind that an individual property owner can sign a waiver and refuse to allow their lead service line to be replaced. Recall that under Skokie Village Code, a property owner owns their water service line from the B-box into the home. At the end of the day, we do not possess the legal authority to go onto their property and abate their lead service line. So, in that circumstance, the Illinois Department of Public Health has provided a waiver that all communities in Illinois are required to use. So the Public Act requires that property owners under a partial service line replacement situation, they are required to do a full service line replacement. However, they can sign a waiver, refuse to do so. If they do that, the village has to take that waiver, and then we have to file it with the Illinois Department of Public Health. So there's a whole process that's been created here. So how does this whole thing work and what has to be done? Well, as outlined in the memo, this affects us in a couple of ways. Here's the things that the village has to do now. We're in the process of creating an inventory of our system. The inventory of our system is to identify all lead service lines in Skokie. The majority of our service lines in our water system right now are currently still unknown. We're in the process of doing our inventory. We have to submit a service line inventory in a final form to the state of Illinois by April of 2024. We are working on that inventory now. We have been working on it for more than or about 2 years now. One thing I would point out that residents can do to help us, we do have on our webpage, if you go to the Skokie Public Works Department webpage, you can find under our water and sewer division drop-down menu information with respect to lead in the water, and you will find an icon where you can self-identify your water service line material. It's really simple to do. It's not that complex. I'll take you 30 seconds and show you how you do this. You go into your basement, most likely, or on your first floor if you're on a slab. You will find something that looks like this. This is where your water service comes into your home. Water service comes in on one side, it goes to a meter, and you'll find a shutoff valve on your side of the meter. You want to identify this pipe when it comes in to your home. These similar graphics are on the webpage. When you find that, you want to take something soft, not sharp, look at the pipe. You can generally get a first clue by looking at the coloration of the pipe. If it's a dull gray looking pipe, the odds are good, it's a lead pipe. But if you scratch the outside surface, and you can use a quarter to do this, or a coin, or the edge of a screwdriver, again, nothing sharp, because if it is lead is soft and you could gouge through the side of it. You will see a shiny silver surface. That indicates that it's lead. Copper, I think, is fairly intuitive in terms of the color that you're looking for. If you scrape it, it's going to look like shinier copper. The other material that you may see is galvanized steel pipe, which in some situations can sort of resemble lead. The one trick to identifying galvanized steel pipe is take a refrigerator magnet and hold it next to the galvanized steel pipe. If it's galvanized steel pipe, the magnet's going to stick to it. So one thing residents can do to help us as we complete this inventory is a simple drop-down form. You put your address on there, indicate what your pipe material is. It populates to our GIS database. Anyway, quick plug for that.
Quick question while you're
yes,
there.
Sir.
Thanks for all of this. And I was going to ask, how does that process take place with testing? How else do you do it? I mean, I get this, and this is super helpful,
Yep.
but there are so many people who won't do the online
Yep.
deal. So what's that process?
Yeah, so this is truly harvesting the low-hanging fruit that we can harvest, that we can reach through social media, through presentation, and encourage people to help us, help them, help the state, right? The next steps will be the more intensive steps. So we will have to take the information that we have so far. I'll throw something else up here very quickly. these dots, you can probably recognize on there Williamsburg and Timber Ridge on there. This is sort of representative of, you see the different colored dots on there that represents information that we have to date. The lighter colors or the more gold-looking colors are copper colors. Some of the darker colors on there, though, represent the unknowns. So my point in that is, as we go, so the dots that we have on there are the dots that we have through our own meter records. So we do recurring meter replacements in our water sewer division. So every time our meter folks are in the house, we're assessing what we're seeing and recording that information if we ever have occasion to be in the home. We've harvested the information from our water main replacement projects and going through records of what we know we've done by year. And so on the public side, the records that we have. And we've gone through building department records of where we know residents have done building projects and done service replacements. So what we have in that GIS database now is a combination of the records review that we have available plus residents who have self-identified to this point. So next steps, continued trying to work and encourage residents to self-report, but when we get beyond that, we're going to have to come up with a systematized way of working through areas block by block, and we're going to have to do direct outreach and set up appointments to get into the homes is the ultimate way we're going to get this done.
Do you have, is the inventory publicly available? Could someone go in and take a look and see if there's already data on your particular property?
Yes.
And is that just by them logging in to the portal, or is that they can just type in an address?
Nick, do you recall how they would access through the
It's on the GIS system on our
GIS layer?
website. You can go to Skokie Maps and you can access our Skokie, the maps under there.
Okay.
So that's the assembly of the service line materials inventory. That will then be followed by 2027 with development of a replacement plan for the community. So that replacement plan for the community, we will be working with consulting services to assist us to complete the inventory and to assemble the replacement plan. Things that we can look forward to in creating the replacement plan will be, how do we lay out the plan for how we move forward in a systematic way through the community to undertake wholesale replacements in some organized way. We can expect that that will prioritize certain areas first, likely to prioritize disadvantaged areas first, likely to prioritize certain community facilities first. And community facilities shouldn't necessarily be read to mean government facilities. You can expect those to prioritize daycare facilities, other public health facilities, other specialized uses will be expected to be prioritized. So there will be much work to be done. The principal issues, though, that we want to discuss this evening are is both short-term issues and long-term issues. So the short-term issues that we discussed with the board last spring are service leaks. So going back to the diagram, service leaks, we have about 50 to 60 service leaks that take place in our water system a year. And so since we know that a service leak on the public side, let's talk about that first, since there are 50 to 60 service leaks a year, and we know that about 80% of those happen on the village's side of that B box. So when that happens, the Act says that we have 30 days to repair it, and if it's a lead service on the village's side, to replace that lead service with a copper service. We also know that the Act says when you replace a part of a lead service line, you have to replace all of a lead service line. So in that instance, the village's need to replace its portion of a lead service line triggers the need to replace, for a resident to replace their portion of lead service line. The converse is also true. When a resident has a leak on their private service line, it triggers a replacement of the village's portion of its service line. So there are leak situations that will take place, that do take place, and will continue to take place. And so the question with respect to those situations is who pays in those situations, and what is or should be the cost approach. Now, going back historically, as I mentioned, the cost apportionment or maintenance responsibility for those was very clear cut. The village had a maintenance responsibility from the B box to the street, not including the B box, because that's how village code has defined it for many, many years. The resident owned the responsibility for everything else, and that was that. The question that we discussed in the spring was when, let's say 40 times a year, the leak occurs on the village's side, and that triggers a resident to have to spend $5,000 to $6,000 to $7,000 to dig up their yard and or shoot via directional bore a new water line in their front yard. That's an expense, and that's a $5,000, $6,000 to $7,000 expense for a resident. So that was cost issue one. The long-term issue, I think we've kind of discussed already. We know there's going to be a universe of 10,000 to 11,000 lead service lines that have to be abated, and John mentioned in his summary, or I'm sorry, in his introduction, the dollar magnitude of those expenses. So there's going to be significant long-term expenses in addition to the situation that we face when we're doing water main projects. Yeah.
Question. I know you talked about like a wholesale cost, if that was, something that was going through during that time. But has there ever been a subsidized cost? Or are there grant monies available for residents who may not have the financial access at that particular point?
Well, there may be. We're leading to that. So outside of that, there are grant funds that are out there, and so I was just about to get into that. So grant funding. Did you want to?
Let me just make one comment before we proceed. There is a home improvement program in place currently that the village offers, and so homeowners that have expenses associated with their home that they're not able to cover and they're income eligible, the village has a program through Community Development Block Grant that there is grant funding available to keep people in their home. And so that's not specific to lead service lines, it's just a general program that's available to every homeowner in town.
And I might add, we've had discussions with our state legislators. John was very delicate in the way he phrased this. It's an unfunded mandate. We're trying to make it a funded mandate. And we have gotten a commitment from our legislators that they are going to be taking a look at this, among other items, to do some cost sharing. So hopefully, not immediately, but in the near future, the legislature will be coming up with a pathway towards some long-term funding, because they've been made abundantly aware of how expensive all of this is. So it's
And so, yeah, we also then have the expenses associated with what do we do for all those services when we have a water main project. For example, the water main projects that we had talked about for fiscal '23 that we delayed in the aftermath of our discussions last year. There were 239 water services on those projects. Not all of those are lead, but you can reasonably assume a goodly number of those are lead. So those are all these cost factors for all of these different things need to be taken into consideration, and we need to figure out how we're going to approach those situations with our residents, with our business and property owners in the community. Grant funds. Grant funds as they exist right now include Illinois EPA state revolving loan funds, which are somewhat limited when you're a town of the size that we are. Those funds tend to be targeted more towards the smaller Illinois communities and less so the larger ones. Bipartisan Infrastructure Act funds will be available, although the lobbying continues still for how those funds will be allocated by state for this issue. Funding allocations were based on old data, which results in states that really don't have particularly acute, and acute is being nice, lead service issues, getting a lot of money that they don't really need, and states that have acute lead service issues like Illinois and Ohio and some of the northern states not getting enough money for their needs. So still waiting some determinations with respect to that. On a positive note, we're pleased to note that through the efforts of Congresswoman Schakowsky, the village has received notice that we will receive $2 million in funding for lead service line funding assistance. Those dollars are still subject to additional administrative proceedings, but we want to recognize and acknowledge those funds. We're grateful for that. And I would point out, as the mayor alluded to, there are continuing funding discussions at a state level that are prospective, but we are aware of those discussions taking place, and we have heard confirmation from pretty highly placed people at the EPA that discussions are real and they're alive, as the mayor knows, and I'm sure the rest of you know. Whatever ultimately may or may not come of those, there are some significant discussions about some potentially significant funding opportunities. Whether they do come to pass or not remains to be seen. So there may be significant additional funds out there that would be at very favorable rates or terms, let's say. So the prospects are there. So what we proposed to the board in the memo is a suggested cost share approach, which would apply to situations where we are doing service line replacements in the context of water main replacement projects. When we're doing scheduled lead service line replacement projects, which is probably still a year or more down the road, and probably most to the short-term point, when we're doing replacements that are triggered by a leak on the public side. This would be a 50-50 cost share approach with residents or homeowners, with payment terms offered to residents at a 1% interest rate over a term of 15 years, with payments at $53.91 per quarter, which I think is extremely affordable, is, I think, a very fair cost share. The village, in taking this approach, is trying to do a couple of things. The village is, I think, respectful of the act and the intentions of the act and the public health benefits of the act. As we've heard, the village also recognizes this is a hugely significant financial issue. We're trying to strike a balance between how do we effectuate the purposes of the act from the public health side, how do we manage the financial issues associated with it, how do we also represent the interest of our residents who are also going to be impacted by the financial impacts of the act. So we're trying to strike a balance as to how we achieve all these things. I would also add that from the same discussions that I participated in with the IEPA, I think the IEPA has an expectation that community water suppliers, and certainly we are a community water supplier, that a community water supply will make steps to provide some form of assistance for its residents. So while a resident can sign a waiver and say, I do not want my lead service line replaced, the IEPA will be looking closely at whether or not the reason for that is because it's not affordable. And they will expect that the community water supply has done something to address the affordability element for its residents. So I think it's important that we have something in place to at least make this situation somewhat affordable for our residents.
Trustee Sucker.
Does the waiver form ask the reason for why the person is signing it?
I have a copy of it. I don't think that it does.
Because it would make sense for it to ask that. Because what would be another reason that they wouldn't want to do it?
Some people just don't want it. I will tell you that when we had the MGN project, for example, when Morton Grove Niles Water Commission did the water main project, which came through Skokie. I apologize, Trustee Sutker. I thought I brought it with me. I did not. I have it on my desk, and I will be happy to provide it to John. And I will note that that's the IDPH provided waiver, and we are not allowed to vary from that waiver at all. So, in that instance, one benefit, if you will, to those who are impacted by having that main project go down their street, everybody who had a lead service line was offered the opportunity to have, copper service provided to them at no cost. And a number of people refused it. People will say, even when they receive the information on the health impacts of lead, they'll say, well, I'm older and I don't have any grandchildren that come in the home, and a lot of the literature suggests that it's, lead is a particular issue for younger individuals who are still in development stages, or they just don't want to be bothered and they don't want people on their property or in their homes, and they decline. So, we do expect to see some of that.
So there's a disruption that they don't want? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, as we look at, the village having a 33-year period for compliance with abating lead in the system, though, when those people sign that waiver and we file it with IDPH, IEPA has told us, well, that's going to be in the records as a non-compliant property, and whether this is a scare tactic or not, so to speak, IEPA has said there's going to be a record created, though, and they have not, I heard this question asked, they have not given us a concrete answer to, well, what happens if the property sells? Do we have to keep a database for when the new property owner takes over the property and becomes aware that the prior owner signed a waiver and there's still a lead line, and then what happens? And so the IEPA I think will treat it as if that's still kind of an outstanding liability on that property. So don't be surprised that that property that signed a waiver, that in some period of time doesn't come back to you.
Mayor?
Sure.
If I may, thank you. What I'm trying to understand is if someone signs a waiver, what's the ramifications? It doesn't sound like, other than being noted within the state, what's the ramifications? And I would suggest that maybe some people don't want to proceed with the project because, again, if there's any restoration work that needs to be done because of the project, it's also on the homeowners.
Yes.
So the extent of the financial burden to the homeowner is larger than just the replacement. But going back to my original question really is, what's the ramifications?
So the ramification is if the property owner refuses to allow the replacement and refuses to sign the waiver, is that really?
No, I signed the waiver. What's the ramifications? Who's gonna do what to me? Is there a penalty? Is there?
No.
So.
No, so if the resident signs the waiver, they refuse to allow us on the property to do the replacement of their portion of the line, we'll replace the public portion of the line. We will file their signed waiver with IDPH. And as I've said, a scenario like that will probably play out. When their property transfers, the new owner will come in, they'll discover at closing or sometime thereafter that, hey, I've still got a lead service line, how'd that happen? and the state will come back and tell us probably that we have a responsibility for it, because it will still show up on a record someplace that that lead line exists, right? So, but in practical terms, Allison, the answer is we will proceed with the partial service line replacement, and life, at least for some period of time, will go on. Similarly, I will add, I guarantee you, we will have people who will not let us on their property, and they won't sign the waiver either.
I think one point to add to the discussion is that this is a state law, and so they are then compliant with state law. And so that's really the purpose of the waiver at this point. If people do not want to change out their service line, then they're still compliant. We will be compliant because we're responsible for the entire system. We'll be compliant with state statute. And
Sadly, in my opinion, the state law didn't make any ramifications that anybody feels the necessity to be compliant.
Some of it will evolve, as we know, in the real estate world. For instance, when asbestos became a factor, we now know that in most sales, the attorneys are looking at the presence of asbestos before the closing, and that becomes an issue. And it probably would be that same type of thing. But again, to Max's point, it's only at the point of sale.
And perhaps locally, we could look at ways to incentivize residents locally. I don't know what that looks like. A sign in the front yard, I don't know. But something to incentivize residents to be educated with, the health implications as a community.
Well, I was going to ask about the cost sharing portion. So, would we still honor the cost sharing if they waive it and change their mind later, or there's a new property owner?
yes, it would be for the duration. And so if a future property owner wanted to become compliant, or if the homeowner changed their mind, the program would still be available to them.
I have a question.
Sure. Trustee Klein.
Researching this, trying to find the back door, I was reading about pipe relining. Would that be doable for lead pipes, to reline them?
To reline.
Yes. It's more affordable than replacing.
It's possible. I would say, though, it depends on the size of your hose pipe. And so if you have a lead service line, I would say it's probably pretty iffy, but maybe possible. I mean, it's certainly an easy pipe to burst. But I'm not aware of a lot of water line lining being done for a smaller size lead service going to your average size, if you will, Skokie home. I never say never, but
You are tactful.
And we should also mention, we do have extensive experience with lining sewer lines, but we have not done lining of water main within the community yet. And so we haven't been convinced from a health standard, from a
It
long-term
will accomplish
perspective.
what I would like it to accomplish.
Right.
And
Yeah.
one other thing, we have a person replace a lead pipe. And at this moment, we're all anxious to get home to see what our pipes are, that.
I expect 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 new entries tomorrow.
Could we define, and I mean really define, if we dig up, like if it's in my home, my Buffalo box, is in my parkway, right, like the center of my lawn. So if I was gonna replace it, my lawn would be dug up. Would our responsibility be to resod the lawn, to bring it back to what we found it?
Yes.
Yes?
I believe yes. We wouldn't do the restoration. I mean, the details that you see in the memo are what's detailized, if you will, right now. So our carve-out is in that cost share. We're not going to pay for what's going on in your basement. So let me clarify that. the water line comes into your basement, right? So the basics of, here comes the new line, repairing the concrete, comes through your slab, yes. When you had it behind your custom bar that you have in your basement and you had to cut drywall and do this and do that under your bar because that's where your line was and you decided you wanted to cover it with all that stuff, yeah, the village not taking care of that for you, okay? The basic restoration of your yard and basic backfill, I would say yes. Your prize landscaping and all that other stuff you may have going on.
I'm just asking to be
Yeah.
tremendously specific.
Yeah, no, I got you.
Because I could see this coming down the pike as, you know, you owe me a new record.
Oh, sure. No, understood.
So I'd like to be very specific on this issue.
Yeah.
What about the people who did this on their own and then find out about the cost sharing and come back to us? So before this law,
Yeah. I would say that there is almost always that circumstance. And I don't know that before a couple of years ago, we would have thought we would be here talking about this in quite this way. I mean, the issue of lead in water had been talked about for a few years before the legislation came along. But I think about it in the context of some of the other programs that we've started over the years, and yes, there have clearly been a number of homeowners who have upgraded their water services to copper, and I don't know what to say other than times change, things change, governmental mandates that came from elsewhere, in this case, caused a change in circumstance. And this is a cost share.
And the other distinction is, if I have a lead service, if I no longer have a lead service line in town, I self-selected to replace that with copper. And so now moving forward, it's going to be mandated on people, because if I have a leak on my side, I'm responsible for that. And so there are some parallels moving forward with self-selecting into replacing the lead service line.
and also they chose not to wait for this, because most people knew this was coming down the pike at some point. So,
It's true.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for this well-rounded report. I find it interesting in looking at the information that was provided to us about the lead water service replacement program survey. So we are obviously ahead of the curve, because if you look at the other municipalities, they have not, hardly any of them have dealt with this in any way, shape, or form. Most are just sort of catching up, it looks like. Most response was, no, we haven't even started to look at it. So I thank Skokie for being ahead of the curve. I think it's important, we're staying within state mandate is important. And of course, protecting our residents from lead is, really important. But I'm really astounded to look at the survey to realize most villages, municipalities have done nothing yet. Just a comment.
We're always ahead of the curve.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah.
I have a question regarding, on the private side, I understand that we're doing the inventory, and as we're addressing service leaks, we're doing the lead replacement. What if it's identified by the private property owner, or whether it's a contractor or the property owners themselves who are potentially dealing with an issue on their side? Is there a process or a notification where the village would be informed that there's work to be done on their side then, so that we ensure that the whole lead pipe gets replaced?
Yeah, so normally when there's a repair or replacement on the private side, that activity is going through building department, and so we get notified.
Okay.
So in that situation, that's gonna trigger a full line replacement. But what we're saying is that resident will bear the expense on their side, but the village will take on the responsibility for doing all the work on the village side and in the village right-of-way, which is pretty significant.
Okay.
And in some roadways is a really significant benefit.
Okay.
Most of our mains in Skokie are offset to either one side of the road or the other, so if it's on the far side of the roadway, I mean, just the roadway restoration alone is pretty significant. So it is, even though that private property owner might have a larger burden for that repair, they are getting a considerable benefit from the village for us taking that on. But again, you know, it's in our interest as well. We, you know, take the long-term view. The lead needs to leave the system, so what it takes to help make that happen.
This is not up for a vote this evening, but it will be back at the time of the budget. So if anybody has any other questions as time goes on, or you hear from residents who have questions, please let Max or John know. If it's somebody who's complimentary, let me know. Otherwise, if somebody has a complaint, John or Max will be available. But Max, thank you.
Thank you.
And we're on notice during the budget.
Thank you.
Item B was approved under tonight's consent agenda, and that completes my report this evening.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is report of our Corporation Council, and welcome back.
Thank you. Happy to be back.
Michael Lorge.
Items A and B in my report for tonight were approved as part of the consent agenda at the beginning of tonight's meeting. Item C is a request for executive session in accordance with paragraph 2C1 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act pertaining to the review and discussion of personnel matters. Mayor, I'd ask for board approval of this.
A motion for an executive session is in order. Trustee Klein, seconded by Trustee Pierce-Slovan. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson?
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Pierce-Slovan?
Aye.
Trustee Klein? Mayor Van Duzen?
Aye, the motion passes.
And that concludes my report, and yes, I'm appreciative to be back.
Thank you. Next item is the 2022-23 CDBG, public hearing number 2. Justin Moore from our staff will conduct the hearing.
Well, thanks everyone for sticking around. Good evening. My name is Justin Malone, and I'm the Neighborhood Services Coordinator for the Village of Skokie's Community Development Department. This is the second public hearing for the Community Development Block Grant Program, or CDBG. And as an overview, tonight is the second of 4 public meetings for this program. And tonight we have 15 applicants for this program who will be sharing their proposals to explain where their requested funding will be applied. And as a reminder, each of the applications have been provided to the board for the review beforehand. The next public meeting will be on February 6th, where the board will solidify these funding considerations, followed by the final public meeting on March 6th, where the village will present their 2023 program year action plan. For tonight, we've broken up the CDBG funding into 3 categories for presentations. We're going to start with the capital improvements.
Yes. Oh,
Yes.
I am a licensed clinical social worker employed by a social service agency that is an applicant for a CDBG grant. I do not believe that this creates a conflict. However, I believe it is important to avoid the appearance of partiality. Therefore, I will recuse myself from participating in the discussions relating to the applications and from voting on the grants. My recusal from participating in the discussion should not be construed as indifference to the valuable services that the applicants provide to people in need. I respect and admire all of the agencies for their fine work, especially during these difficult times. I thank all the agencies for their work and dedication. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to start with the capital improvements presentations. This funding is for selected projects to improve either infrastructure or facilities in Skokie. This is a list of our applicants for this category. The second category is going to be with social services, which aim to provide financial assistance for programs and services, and this is the list of applicants for this category. The third category is planning and administration, with which the village intends to implement CDBG funding for projects and planning activities relative to the village's community development efforts. So we'll go ahead and hear from all the applicants tonight, and at the end of the presentation, I'll briefly talk about the village's request for CDBG funding, and again recap next steps to get the 2023 program year finalized. So up first, we have the Housing Opportunity Development Corporation.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Koenig. I'm the Executive Director of Housing Opportunity Development Corporation. We are a nonprofit organization that develops and manages affordable housing throughout the northern suburbs. The organization has been around for 40 years, and we have been, we've had housing here, affordable housing in Skokie for the past 36 years. Just this past year, we moved our permanent office to Skokie. I was honored to have the mayor at our grand opening a few months ago this summer. So our organization, we're permanently located here. This is going to be our permanent home now in the village. The organization has completed over 500 units of affordable housing throughout the suburbs. We're in 18 different communities with over 30 developments that provide housing for low and moderate income households. Households that earn income that is about the minimum wage, between $10 and $20 an hour. We're able to develop housing that is affordable to those households, and we're able to continue to maintain those lower rents for those working households, senior households, and persons with disabilities. We're able to maintain those low rents by continuing to operate the properties effectively and manage those buildings ourselves and do a good job with those. We've come to the village this year and in the past couple of years in order to do some physical improvements to those buildings. We currently have 6 properties here in the village that we manage and operate for low-income families, and we keep the rents low and we keep the operating costs down, but sometimes we need to do physical improvements. We have in the past been able to do things like improve the exterior of buildings, and what we're doing is interested in increasing the security and safety of those buildings. So this year we have applied for some security cameras in order to have an eye on the buildings, in order to provide additional security and safety for those buildings. It's difficult for us to pay those costs out of existing funds that we have and existing resources because the rents are low and we continue to maintain them low so that the households can continue to afford them. So we really appreciate the ability to come to the village and hopefully be able to provide these infrastructure improvements to improve the buildings and continue to maintain and improve their overall safety and security.
Thank you. Does anybody have any comments or questions? If not, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to Skokie.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Raina Trianova, and I'm the Office Facility Manager for Turning Point Behavioral Health Care Center. Our Development Director, Jen Soult, could not be with us tonight, so I will be presenting our project. Turning Point is a community mental health center serving over 1,400 clients a year. both adults and children starting at age of 6, 90% of whom are low income. The Turning Point facility at Skokie Boulevard and Washington Street also accommodates several tenants, such as Namico County North Suburban and Tapestry 360 Health, which was present. Sorry. So Turning Point is applying for funding to replace 2 of the window units on the west side of the building. These large multi-pane units are old and panes or frames are extremely deteriorated. Replacing them will accomplish our goal of enhancing weather protection, safety, and security for the building and its many users, an upgrade that will last for many years to come. We're so grateful for the Village of Skokie for supporting our work and all the many activities that take place under our roof. And we thank you so much for your consideration this year. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Good evening. Hello, could you hear me? I'm Mary Matz. I'm Shore Community Services Chief Philanthropy Officer. Shore's been serving children and adults with intellectual and other developmental disabilities for 72 years, roughly about 400 annually. 82 of the residents live here in Skokie. And this year we're looking at a request for $33,150 to complete HVAC installation at the Los Lloyd Center and our administration center, which is obviously a very known property, which was the former Skokie Police Station right at 8350 Laramie. And then we want to remodel a kitchen at our Sajin F. Carger House. It's a SILA, which is a community integrated living arrangement in Skokie as well for 6 men. We are looking to finalize the completion of our VAV boxes. So over the course of probably about 3, 4, maybe even going on 5 years, we've done a lot of work on our HVAC units as well as fans. The VAV boxes are variable air volume boxes. Basically, they're dampers in the ceilings. 32 of them are in the building at the Los Lloyd Center. With CDBG funding, we've replaced to date, we've got 10 that are on the docket to be done this year. 18 have already been completed, and we need 4 more to finish off the 32. And that way, then that will be upgraded to have digital capabilities, and that goes along with our digital control panel. So a lot of the units don't work because they're pneumatic, and the parts are just obsolete. So we've been converting all that over the course of a number of years. The SILA needs a new kitchen. The last time it was remodeled was about 20 years ago. The reconfiguration of that kitchen would obviously open up the area. It's got an L shape, which, our clients can get through. We have, obviously, for ADA accessibility purposes, but if we get rid of that L, then we could actually have a bigger kitchen table in the kitchen as opposed to eating in the dining room. Cabinets are low. There's no storage, and there's some cracks on the floor. There's also just not the best. There's a lot of wear and tear on those cabinets, so we want to replace those, and that's pretty much the gist of our request.
Thank you, Mary. Trustee Pierce-Lovan.
In our notes, in the funding request,
Mhm.
I don't see the kitchen noted. So I don't know if that changes the financial request. We have that you're requesting $33,150.
That's included in that request for both projects?
I'm not questioning it, I'm just trying to understand.
It's a synopsis, and they just didn't spell it.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure that I understood what your needs are. Thank you.
Okay.
Not questioning you, clarifying.
Sure.
Thank you.
No, my pleasure. Thank you again. Appreciate your support.
Thank you, Mary.
Good evening, Mayor Van Dusen, trustees. I'm David Guthridge, CJE's Executive Director of Affordable Housing. CJE is very grateful to the village's generous support of our requests in past years. Skokie's CDBG awards have funded CJE projects that have improved our facilities and provided better quality of life for low and moderate income Skokie residents. We are a diversified healthcare services organization whose mission is to enhance quality of life and facilitate independence of older adults. We perform this mission through over 35 different programs and services that annually assist 20,000 diverse older adults and caregivers. Most of our clients live close to or below the poverty line and receive free or subsidized services and live in Chicago's north side neighborhoods and north and northwest suburbs. We provide programs in basically 4 areas of service, which are supportive services, mental health, life enrichment, and research. For this year's grant opportunity, we are requesting $28,881 in Skokie Community Development Block Grant funds to replace the carpeting on the main level at CJE's Village Center Senior Housing site, which is next door to this site. This project will include the lobby and 3 front offices. Village Center is at 5140 Galitz, and it is a 150-unit independent living apartment building that's home to 185 very low to low income Skokie residents ages 62 or older. It's one of a few subsidized senior independent living apartment buildings in Skokie and has right now 325 people on the waiting list. Most of the residents receive only supplemental security income, which in 2022 was about $10,092 annually. Village Center provides service coordinators for residents free of charge through a grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The service coordinators provide non-clinical needs assessments, referrals for services, ongoing case management, and they also help residents apply for available government assistance programs ranging from food to housing, utilities, social security, and health care. Our community engagement department provides life enrichment programming for our residents. Replacing this carpeting at the Village Center is much needed. The carpet was last replaced in 2010 and is now threadbare in high traffic areas and becoming worn throughout. Keeping it clean is becoming more difficult as it continues to age. The worn carpet detracts from the environment that we seek to protect. The project will improve the environment to benefit Village Center residents, visitors, and staff, and this project does align with the Village's CDBG vision to improve facilities, provide a better quality of life for low and moderate income Skokie residents, and it also aligns with the Village's CDBG consolidated plan goals to support organizations that provide housing for the elderly, frail elderly, and to support projects that provide improved, expanded, or more affordable housing services to low and moderate income Skokie residents. We do appreciate your consideration of this request, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Hi. Oh. Hi. I haven't used one of these before. Hi, my name is Grace Lipscomb. I'm the development manager at Search Inc. Thank you for having me tonight. Search is a nonprofit organization that supports adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities in Chicago and the north suburbs. We provide supports that include supported living, housing, SILA residence, adult learning, employment services, and advocacy and training. We currently operate, we support over 350 individuals annually. We currently operate 28 community group homes, 14 of which are located in Skokie, and those homes are home to 85 of the individuals we support. At Search, we take great pride in maintaining beautiful and accessible homes that are well integrated into their communities. And the Village of Skokie has been an extremely important partner for us for many years in maintaining and improving several of these residences through the CDBG program. So this year we are respectfully requesting your support to renovate our current landscaping and create an accessible concrete landing for our residential site located on Church Street here in Skokie. This church house is home to 8 men with developmental disabilities who are all very low income and rely on search to meet their day-to-day needs. This project for our team was identified as a key accessibility project that would allow these men easier and safer access to and from their home, as well as greater accessibility when enjoying their outdoor space. So this renewed support will significantly improve the accessibility of the home in many ways, as this home serves men who are aging, many who do have mobility challenges as well, so it would allow them to safely ambulate in and outside of their homes, creating a more suitable living environment. And then additionally, the replacement of this existing crumbling concrete at the home, which again is currently a safety concern here at Search for the residents, will allow them to safely age comfortably for many years to come. And I should note, many of the men who live at Church are long-term residents of Skokie and love living here in the community, going out again and exploring all around. So that's all I have. Thanks for having me and having the opportunity to present. And thanks again for all that you do for Search all year long.
Thank you.
I'm Marlene Hodges. I'm the Vice President and CFO of Orchard Village, and I think this is number 3 or number 4 of the agencies serving adults and families with developmental disabilities. We are very grateful to the help that the village has been able to help Orchard Village with for our homes over the years. We just finished 2 bathrooms, handicap accessible bathrooms to our house on Marmora. Thank you very much. The 8 men who live in the house, it is a wonderful thing. We have a building on Grosse Point Road that we house a number of different programs in, including our behavioral health program. And it has 4 aging HVAC units, and we're hoping to replace 2 of them. We've been in the building since 2014, and we couldn't afford replacing the units when we moved in, and it is now 8 years later, and they're getting older than they were when we first moved in. So thank you for your help, and any support you can help us with would be most appreciated. Any questions?
Thank you, Marlene. The social service applicants are up. JCFS is the first one.
Hi. Thank you. I'm Nicole Druckman. I'm Senior Grants Associate at JCFS Chicago, and I'm really happy to be here tonight to just see all of you in person and thank you for your past support and your consideration of our latest request. JCFS is a comprehensive social services agency serving the Chicago area. We've had a long-standing and continue to do so presence in Skokie. Specifically, our request is for our financial counseling program, which empowers moderate and low-income individuals in Skokie to create more stable financial environments for themselves and their families. To do this, we offer emergency financial assistance, financial counseling, as well as coordinated case management, including linking people to public benefits, as well as other wraparound social services. We are finding that our clients are still reeling.
You can move forward if you'd like with your presentation.
Is it too loud?
No, you can hit the space bar. I know you provided a slide.
I did. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. Okay. Got the sense that something was up. Yeah, I was just saying that we're finding that our clients are reeling from the effects of the pandemic. Many people continue to have debt, but more and more debt, more cumulative over time. As well as we're seeing formerly middle class folks coming in for services, as well as women, returning to the workforce after the pandemic, people divorcing, and just all the many reasons people are in need of financial help. I wanted to just mention our program this year, after a very intensive period during the pandemic of giving out more than $2 million in financial assistance, we are returning to a more financial counseling model. We've never really abandoned that, but it was just during the pandemic so much intensity. Now we are offering more one-to-one financial counseling and literacy education with the hope of really helping people achieve self-sufficiency over time and learn financial management skills that will help them over the course of time. So we just wanted to thank you again. The funds have helped us support our program operations, specifically our case manager who serves Skokie residents. So thank you very much, and it's great to be here. Anything else? Any
Thank you.
questions?
Great to have you.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you in person after a couple years of virtual presentations here. My name is Becky Ramsey, and I'm here on behalf of AHS Family Health Center. Our mission is to provide quality and compassionate healthcare services to the Asian American community and all other underserved or underprivileged communities in a culturally competent and linguistically appropriate manner. The Village of Skokie has generously supported numerous capital projects, as well as our Skokie Dental Clinic through CDBG grants for a number of years, and we are very grateful, particularly through the very difficult times that many agencies and health centers in particular faced the past couple years. Our 4 FQHC clinics provide integrated primary behavioral and oral health care on a sliding scale to patients of all ages, including those on Medicare, Medicaid, and the uninsured. Last year, we served nearly 15,000 patients across our 4 facilities, including nearly 1,700 Skokie residents, and of the 15,000, almost 5,000 received critical dental care. We have an extremely diverse patient population. That's also reflective of the Skokie community. 84% of our residents are best served in a language other than English, and most prevalently, languages include Hindu, Urdu, Korean, Tagalog, and Vietnamese. Our program year 2024 CDBG request for $20,000 will support optimal productivity at our 8800 Lockwood Dental Clinic. Critically, we are the only safety net dental clinic in Skokie for persons who are uninsured, underinsured, or on Medicaid. Briefly, we opened in 2014, the dental clinic in 2017, had a massive shutdown in 2020, and fully reopened later in 2020, and since that time we have struggled to maintain optimal staffing levels that increase our productivity. CDBG funds will help us improve optimal staffing levels to increase productivity, and critically, our staff perform warm handoffs between the medical and dental practices that improve the rate of primary care patients who access dental services. CDBG funds will help us exceed prior year's numbers of total Skokie residents served, as well as CDBG funded people. We are very grateful for your support year over year, and hope that this year we can count on you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Sorry. Good evening, Mayor Van Duzen and Board of Trustees. My name is Mary Elston, and I will be representing Metropolitan Family Services. I'm a bilingual therapist. I speak both English and Assyrian, And I've been a therapist for over 7 years. We want to say that we are very thankful and appreciative of the CDBG funds and your ongoing support. We're requesting funds to continue providing counseling services to low-income residents of Skokie on a sliding fee scale. Clients that seek counseling services, they pay nothing in our general counseling program through those funds that we receive. And we provide counseling services in English, in Spanish, and in Assyrian. We're providing in-person and telehealth services. So again, we want to say that we are very appreciative of your ongoing support, and we thank you for your consideration. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Are there any comments, questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi there, I'm the Development Director at Pure Services, and I wanted to also introduce our new Executive Director, Noy Friel Lopez, who came to us from Turning Point, where Pure also has a satellite office that we opened in 2021. And just wanted to give Noy a quick moment to introduce himself.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. As Pierre's new ED, I'm really thrilled to be part of Pierre's team. And I look forward to working with the Village of Skokie to provide crucial substance use services to its residents. With our satellite office in Skokie at Turning Point, and with your funding support, we can serve so many more residents in need of crucial substance use services. So thank you for your consideration. Back to Ann.
Yeah, we wanted to share a quick story about one of the Skokie residents who we're serving. So Sandy is a Skokie resident with opioid addiction and other mental health challenges who came to Pierre after unsuccessful treatment at another provider that offered methadone treatment but no counseling alongside of it. Sandy received counseling at Pierre's new Skokie location close to her home and was able to identify and address some of the issues underlying her use and to learn coping skills to manage her cravings. With counseling support, she's making steady progress toward recovery and has been able to start a full-time job and is working on getting her driver's license back. She has been using the living room at Turning Point in the same building as Pierre when she needs mental health support, which is a great example of the integration of care that we planned for when we co-located at Turning Point. Sandy uses Medicaid and relies on Pierre's commitment to making treatment accessible to all who need it, regardless of their insurance status or their financial resources. Pierre, in turn, depends on funders like the Village of Skokie to help cover the gap between the actual cost of services and the reimbursement that we receive from Medicaid or from the state for uninsured clients. We are just so grateful of the support you've given in the past for our holistic, evidence-based, and life-saving substance use treatment, and we very much hope that you will continue to support us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Noy, congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor.
Look forward to working with you.
Absolutely. Did it.
Hello, I'm Kathy Honeywell. I'm the Director of Senior and Family Services at North Shore Senior Center. We're a multi-purpose senior center providing enrichment programming, social services, and adult day program services for people living with memory loss in the community. We serve people who live in New Trier, Northfield, Maine, Niles Townships, and the city of Evanston. And we are very grateful for the support of the CDBG funds through the city of Skokie, Village of Skokie, for many years. We're asking for $10,000 to provide case management, supportive counseling, and other services for older adults living in their homes in Skokie. And many of the services we provide are provided to people in their homes. Our main office is in Northfield. We have an office in Niles, but most of our work is in the communities. We see people in their homes. We see them in the hospitals and local nursing homes to help them get connected, whatever resources they may need. And it could be getting homemaker services, home delivered meals. We provide case management, options counseling to let people understand what options are available to them so they can plan for the future. This past year, we've worked with Village of Skokie staff and the library staff to provide some benefits enrollments events at the library. And we have various support groups for people living with Parkinson's, hearing loss, grandparents raising grandchildren, family caregivers, people who are supporting people living with dementia, and we have educational workshops for family caregivers throughout the year. And again, we appreciate your support. Do you have any questions? Very fast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Melody Rose. I'm the Executive Director at the Harbor. The Harbor has been serving the Skokie and North Shore communities for over 50 years, providing emergency and transitional housing to female identifying youth and non-binary youth. And want to talk to you a little bit about our specific initiatives that have impacted Skokie. We've been very grateful to be a longtime partner and certainly appreciative of the services specific to young people experiencing homelessness. So just as a core piece, I want to emphasize that in our approach to the work, the Harbor sees housing as a social justice issue. A key aspect of our work, whether it's the emergency housing, the community outreach, or transitional living programs, is creating access points throughout the community, because access, especially for young people, and language for young people and understanding homelessness is incredibly important. So to do that, we have to partner closely with a number of stakeholders, whether that's our youth, whether that's partners, and even our staff, because those are the folks who are seeing our youth day in, day out. We also want to promote safe spaces for understanding and collaboration. And I'm pleased to share some of those initiatives that have been Skokie specific and with the support of the village in those efforts. So specific to the equitable access to service, as we think about these three different pockets of services that the Harbor provides, really want to focus on this outreach piece, because we've had the good fortune, thanks to the village's facilitation of connecting with people like Marlene with Orchard Village, to acquire one of their properties for our transitional living program. We have 3 in the village. And we also partner with places like Connections for the Homeless in order to provide a continuum of care for families that may have emergency housing needs, or folks outside of our service area that our service age that we're unable to meet. We also have new partnerships with places like Skokie United, and very excited to see what we can build as a grassroots-led effort in expanding what awareness looks like, and also creating opportunities for youth leadership. And this year, the Harbor is thrilled to be the recipient of the District 219 Dance Marathon, and that's allowed us a really unique opportunity as an outreach provider within both of the high schools. And because of that, we've been able to expand our community outreach to over 650 youth this year alone through community presentations that the school has created for us. So we're really excited to be able to build on this, and incredibly grateful for the opportunity to come and share about what we've got going on. Any questions?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Letitia Fiorito, and I'm the Government Relations Manager for WINGS. Thank you for allowing us to present again this year. WINGS is Over the past several years, obviously through the pandemic, we're of no surprise that we experienced a lot of the struggles and barriers for our clients as other agencies. In the past year, WING's statistics have aligned directly with the Illinois Domestic Violence Hotline. Our services we served 984 individuals this past year, which was a 30% increase over the year before. We anticipate now that our shelters are able to exceed the 50% CDC congregate shelter, that we'll be able to serve almost at 100%, hopefully within the next 12 months or fiscal year, which will allow us to serve more of those anticipated Skokie residents. We anticipate that we'll be able to serve 15 of your residents this coming fiscal year, which is why WINGS has asked for $5,000 to support specifically the Village of Skokie residents through our emergency shelter, which they are allowed to stay for 90 to 120 days, receiving emergency shelter and all of the integrative services that will allow them to transfer to transitional housing. For more than 10 years, I can speak of, WINGS has had a unit here an apartment building that has at least 4 units in it, where our residents come and they become your Village of Skokie residents, and they come here and become part of your population. And so we would like to continue this partnership and hope that we can continue to do so with our request. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Harriet Levy, CEO of the Center for Enriched Living. Good to be back and good to see you all. Center for Enriched Living has had a presence in Skokie for probably about 50 years. We're located in Riverwoods, but we serve people with developmental disabilities from throughout the Chicago area. I break our programs into 3 components. First and foremost, social isolation is the #1 and key barrier to a full life for people with developmental disabilities. We serve teens and adults, and you think about what your life is enriched by. The same thing holds true for people with developmental disabilities. They want the same things that you have and that you're looking for in a full life. Music, theater, dance, drama, technology, yoga, whatever it is that makes you happy, the same holds true for people with developmental disabilities. So that's the first. We have social programs that run 7 days a week. Tonight is arts night. We have Monday bowling night, bingo night, dance, technology, yoga, health, healthy cooking, anything. And they're in the community much of the time and being connected to community. The second component of what we do is our Adult Reach for Success Day program. At age 22, adults transition out of the school system, and the opportunities, as parents like to say, it's like falling off a cliff. They feel that life has ended, at that age, because there's not that many options. But we are one of the, few options that are available, and it really is about continued learning long after school ends, learning how to connect to the community, be part of the community, be fully included in the community, volunteer in the community. They volunteer at Bernie's Book Bank, and they deliver Meals on Wheels in Skokie, as a matter of fact, and they love it, and they love connecting to people and connecting to each other through common interests. The third one, which is what I bring to you tonight to ask for funding, is for our employment program. There's an 85% unemployment rate for this population. I happen to think it's higher because we're not tracking the true numbers. People with developmental disabilities want to work in the community. They don't want to all work in a warehouse or all work at one job. They have different interests, just like us. We have different interests. We enjoy different types of jobs. So that's exactly what we do, and that's the funding that we're asking for, is to provide Skokie residents with employment training and help them find a job in the community, and hopefully in the Skokie community. So your funding will help 2 residents get jobs in the community of their choosing that match their talents and skills. So I appreciate your past funding and your future funding for the center, and I got to go home and check my pipes in my basement, so that's about all I have to say. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Harriet.
I'm also the third one that has never used one of these before, so just a heads up. Good evening, everyone. My name is Paige Lauerman, and I am with Impact Behavioral Health Partners. I am one of the employment program supervisors. Just for a quick background on our agency, we're a nonprofit, and we were established in 1988 in response for the need of supported housing for adults living with mental health symptoms and housing instability. While we have provided housing services for over 33 years, we eventually expanded to clinical and employment services. Impact Behavioral Health Partners is seeking program year 23 funding to support our ongoing provision of employment services to Skokie residents. Impact's employment program uses a research-backed method to help residents who struggle with mental health symptoms find and maintain competitive employment. Upon entry into our program, participants receive a thorough assessment of their strengths and challenges, resume and cover letter assistance, and benefits counseling if they are receiving any public supports. And this could be SSI, SSDI, Medicare, Medicaid, etc. Participants meet weekly with their employment specialist to review job leads, complete applications, prepare for interviews, and address any other work-related needs they might have. Outside of these meetings, a participant's employment specialist will network with employers who fit their preferences to identify employment opportunities that are a good fit and connections that can help facilitate the connection as well. Once a participant obtains employment, we just don't boot them out of the program. We're not like a temp agency. We continue working with them for at least 90 days or until they're comfortable in employment. And also, let's say they do get a job and it doesn't work out the first time or something happens, that's totally okay too. We continue working with them because it happens. Participants graduate from the program, again, once they're comfortable maintaining the job on their own. 84% of participants who find employment with the help of our program retain their jobs for at least 90 days. Referrals to our program come primarily from three sources: our amazing partnership with Turning Point, Impact's growing number of permanent supportive housing residents in Skokie, which is great, and self-referrals from the community. As Impact expands its affordable housing footprint in Skokie, we anticipate an increase to 25 residents served during program year 23. We appreciate your consideration and hope we can continue providing services to Skokie residents. Thank you so much. Any questions? No? All right, perfect. Thank you all.
Before Justin goes into the village request, I would like to thank all of you for your extraordinary patience. We do very much appreciate all of the heavy lifting that you do. You really are the ones who provide the essential services. So many people in the community would go without if it weren't for you. The work you do often is in the background. It's not the sexy work. It isn't the work that always gets the media attention, but what you do is the essential work. And you do it for those who are not able to do it for themselves. I just made a simple note of some of the services that you give: health, including medical, mental, dental, housing, low and moderate income housing, subsistence, addiction counseling, senior and teen services. This gets right to the core of what is needed in the community, and for that we thank you. I think we especially learned the kind of service, the depth of service that you give during COVID. If there ever was a challenge with the clientele that you work with on a day in, day out, 7-day, 24-hour a day basis, it was during COVID. And I do know that our police and our health department rely on you for your assistance. So thank you very much. And I must say, Justin, I don't know what you and Johanna did, but under normal circumstances, it would be snowing outside and it would be about 10 below. A few of you are, I won't say old timers, that's a no-no, but some of you, I believe, remember the pre-COVID days, and it always was predictably the coldest day of the year. So Justin, Johanna, thank you. I'm not sure if it's raining out or not, but we'll take it. Justin?
Yeah, thanks everyone for your presentations. I just have a couple more slides and then we'll finish up here. So the village is also applying for CDBG funding this year in the categories of capital improvements, social services, and planning and administration. The village will be requesting for continued funding for the home improvement program, which provides financial assistance for home improvements and upgrades for eligible low to moderate income homeowners, as well as the neighborhood enhancement program, which aims to beautify low to moderate income neighborhoods one block at a time. The village's public works department will also continue to request funding for their street resurfacing program in low to moderate income neighborhoods, as well as their sidewalk grant program. And finally, the village's human services division will continue to request funding for a dedicated social worker for their work with some of Skokie's most vulnerable residents, such as seniors, people with disabilities, and the youth. And then just to recap again, the next steps for this program is for the village board to consider funding the funding presentations made here tonight at the next meeting on February 6th. And then prior to the action plan being approved, a draft version will be available for public review and comments as well. Thanks.
And thank you again for coming. A round of applause for you. And the final item is public comment. Is there anybody who wishes to address the village board?
Hi, my name is Judy Mendel, and you know, last year there was a Skokie, in the Skokie E-News, request from Max Slanker to go check out your lead pipes and give you pictures and everything, and I did that, and I do have lead pipes. Anyway, good evening, everybody. Last year at a board meeting, when asked why budget meetings weren't live streamed, we were told that because budget talks work better in a more intimate setting than this room that we're in currently, and they can't really be live streamed, and that interested citizens were welcome to come in person. But that might not always be possible for the citizenry due to illness, disability, etc. Well, last week I went to the Economic Development Commission meeting in a conference room at Village Hall as I wanted to hear the update on the Old Orchard development. I assume this conference room is the more intimate setting that you were referring to. The discussion was very interesting. And moreover, from my understanding, it was the first time for a multi-access hybrid meeting with a few people, including Trustee Sutker, attending via Zoom. There was an interesting directional mic and camera that moved so people who were talking could be seen on the Zoom screen. It was really fascinating. I don't think that the meeting was recorded or posted anymore. What I would like to recommend is that all commission and budget meetings, especially budget meetings, have live streaming, and also to communicate better which things are live streamed, because this Thursday, the Plan Commission, I think, is usually live streamed, correct? But in the communication in today's e-news, it said attend in person. So is it being live streamed or not?
refresh my memory. The Plan Commission cases are, Plan Commission meets in this room, and so it is live streamed. Is it? I think that's correct, right, Johan?
But there, we do not tap into Zoom. We don't accommodate the Zoom public comment. We don't have the staff to do that.
No, that I understand, but I guess communication, if you could tell either the PR person or Antennas, I mean, the website, everything should say it's going to be live streamed and not just in person. Correct?
Thank you. Thank you for the suggestion.
That's what I think. Thank you very much. And I hope, is it possible that the budget meetings will be on track to?
So you witnessed the debut of our new technology.
Yeah, I
and
saw it.
so
It was great.
we hope to utilize it, and so more to come
Okay.
regarding that equipment.
And I mean, it can be Zoom for people who need Zoom, but then you can live stream Zoom. I know on Facebook, but
Right.
maybe not on YouTube.
Right. The budget hearings, we used Zoom for budget hearings in the past 1 year with COVID, and it did not work well. But we now have the OWL. You're referring to an OWL, and so we now have new technology that it seems to be much more conducive for everybody to hear when people are talking. And so we're excited about having the new technology and seeing what applications we can utilize that.
So do you
for.
think it'll just be recorded and then posted later, or can it be live streamed?
The live stream is a little bit more complicated, and so those are the details that we're working through. You did witness the first time that we used the new equipment, and so we're working through what will be able to be broadcast and what will. People are always welcome to come in person. There's no question that people are always welcome to come in person, but we're working through what can be live streamed and what can't.
Okay. And just curious if there's any update on getting a special counsel for implementing the electoral reform referendums?
I spoke to a candidate today, and so it continues to be a process to find a qualified individual to help advise us in that process.
Okay, and do you know when, because we have talked to Antennas, nothing, in what it's been like 2 months since the election, has even been mentioned in any Skokie publication that the electoral reforms passed?
That is true. So the voters went to the ballot in November, and there were 3 referendums that were approved. And so we have been provided some information to help inform information that the village publishes, but some of that information is inaccurate. And so we are working to have an advisor that's well-versed in these matters in order to help us ensure that our information is accurate when we publish it. And so we are working to move this along, but we won't be able to necessarily have an information published until we're sure that it's accurate.
Okay, I guess to me, it's just news. It could be a one-line thing. Hey, did you know these reforms passed? I mean, to me, it just is interesting. It's that these, that they passed. But, and I'm really curious if you're saying that we, or provided inaccurate information? Is that what you said?
I don't know that we want to discuss all of the details of this at this particular moment. I'm happy to discuss it with you. But there was, at the first board meeting after the election, the community was informed that the referendums passed. But things like the number of people who voted and the percentages and so forth, it changes over time. It evolves, and so when we publish information, we want it to be final and accurate, and some of the points under the 3 referendums were not. I just need to verify that the information before the village publishes it, that it's completely accurate.
Do you have any idea on timeline?
At this moment, I can't speak to that.
And so you're not even going to just say these 3. People are asking us all the time because we have no local press. It's like. Well, we have the patch. I'm sorry, but yeah.
Well, if the the information that was suggested that we publicize was more than just the 3 referendums. There was a lot of information that was provided, and so our tactic was to have a full article that was being presented, but we just need to be sure that it's accurate when it's printed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Trustee Sucker.
I move we adjourn for executive session.